With the absolute frenzy that was the Juan Soto sweepstakes, is it fair for us to compare it to when Alex Rodriguez hit free agency at age 25 in 2001? Yes. Yes, it is. At the time, Alex Rodriguez was a one-of-a-kind free agent, one that, in my opinion, we have only seen someone similar to twice in the 25 years since. In his 5 full seasons with Seattle that preceded his free agency, he averaged nearly 8 WAR per season, with his total mark ranking higher than any other player in baseball, including his superstar teammate Ken Griffey Jr. He was a premier defender at the toughest position on the diamond, while also cracking the 40 home run mark 3 years in a row as a primary shortstop, one of only 2 such shortstops to do so multiple times. He was the true definition of a 5-tool player, a term that gets thrown around a lot by scouts, and better than that, he was hitting free agency way younger than anyone else in his class at age 25. He had cultivated a unique relationship with Mariners fans. Fans raved over his polite nature, polished image, and it certainly helped that A-Rod was a key contributor in the deepest postseason runs in Seattle's franchise history. It seemed as though all sides, from the player in A-Rod to his teammates to the fans to ownership itself, were keen on a reunion despite the obvious competition. And before we get into that competition, make sure you subscribe to the Jolly Olive channel if you're here every weekend watching my videos. I'd really appreciate it. And at first, it seemed as though that competition would be the New York Mets. In the middle of November, weeks after the conclusion of a season where they reached the World Series for the first time in 15 years, the New York Mets had been the leading candidate to land Alex Rodriguez's services. They had capital to spend, and A-Rod said numerous times that he was very interested in playing for the organization. But in a shock to many, the franchise pulled out just 3 days into free agency, with general manager Steve Phillips saying that A-Rod's requests for preferential treatment would destroy, quote, the fabric of the team. Among those requests included an office in the stadium for A-Rod's marketing team, as well as his own personal merchandise space and a personal jet. At the time of the Mets' withdrawal, it had already been stated that big market clubs like the New York Yankees and Los Angeles Dodgers weren't interested in getting involved, which meant that it would become a Wild West for all the other teams that had a say. 5 days later, 5 teams emerged, the favorite being a reunion with the Seattle Mariners. Trailing not far behind were the Chicago White Sox and Colorado Rockies. I'm not kidding. Times were different, man. And in the end, it would be the organization in the worst spot of the 5 that would land his services. A team who had just finished a season with the worst team ERA in baseball. A team who had never won a postseason series in franchise history. A team that was paying a combined $15.5 million for 4 players who would provide them 0.0 WAR in the 2001 season. Despite a mediocre roster, existing bad contracts, and no lineage of team success, Alex Rodriguez signed with the Texas Rangers on a 10-year deal worth $252 million. Rodriguez himself was more than aware of how surprising his decision was. He himself remarked that, quote, people hadn't talked about Texas, so I hadn't given it much thought. It's like the girl you never think about dating, but then you meet and, whoa. Never change, A-Rod. At the time, the largest contract in MLB history belonged to Mike Hampton at 8 years and $121 million, which was signed while the Rockies were also trying to negotiate an Alex Rodriguez deal at the same time. The largest contract in sports history belonged to Kevin Garnett at 6 years and $126 million. Alex Rodriguez nearly doubled that with his signing. This came after months and months of preaching that, in his pursuit of a new home, that money was not everything to A-Rod. In fact, winning a championship was his top priority, supposedly. The good rapport that A-Rod had carefully constructed with Seattle's organization and fan base had completely disintegrated when news of his signing broke, not only because it was an in-division rival, but more so because it was a team that didn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. It should be said that the Mariners couldn't come close to the eventual value of the accepted contract for A-Rod. With the heap of talent on Seattle's roster and their small market status, their final offer capped out at 5 years, $94 million. Other teams came closer to the final value, but bowed out for extraneous reasons. But rather than treating the situation with grace, the meetings between Seattle and Rodriguez's team felt deeply impersonal. As regarded in Lou Piniello's autobiography years later, Alex Rodriguez didn't even appear in the business meeting with the Seattle Mariners, letting Scott Boras handle the meeting by himself. When Seattle delivered their pitch and offer, Boras told them that they weren't even close and walked out the door. In a later meeting between the two sides closer to the eventual conclusion, Seattle's chairman chairman and president both didn't bother to attend the gathering, simply assuming that they had no chance to retain his services. Lou Piniella was present again though, and the only MLB manager that A-Rod had ever known embraced his shortstop at the end of the discussion, perhaps sensing that any hope of a future in Seattle was certainly doomed. This is how his tenure with the Mariners would come to an unceremonious close. Suffice to say, other general managers were befuddled when the numbers initially hit the presses. Then Oakland A's general manager Sandy Alderson called the contract beyond alarming and a crisis situation. CEO of the Seattle Mariners Howard Lincoln referred to Texas's general manager Doug Melvin as some fool. Then Houston Astros general manager Jerry Hunsicker compared the signing to D-Day, calling it a catastrophic event. Really think about that quote, man. D-Day? Catastrophic? The event was surely seismic, for it would be another 12 years before any other MLB player's free agent contract would eclipse the $200 million mark. Tom Hicks, then owner of the Texas Rangers, had spent more on Alex Rodriguez's contract than he did on Globe Life Park and the surrounding area over the past 3 years combined. But from the perspective of Scott Boras, it was Hicks himself that drew A-Rod to Texas, not just the dollar amount. Boras remarked that Hicks made more of an impression on A-Rod in 2 days than Seattle's ownership had done so in the past 8 years. But the beginning of a promising tenure in Texas found bumps in the road really fast. A quick interruption on today's video from me from the future to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Fume. Fume is a flavored air device that is perfect for anyone looking to break away from bad habits or for anyone that's just looking for something enjoyable to use. It's nicotine-free, non-toxic, and guilt-free. No batteries, no vapor, and nothing to charge. It's easy and safe to use anywhere. And what's really cool about Fume is how customizable it is, because they have a bunch of different flavors like crisp mint and orange vanilla. This holiday season, you can give the gift of better habits with Fume. Head to tryfume.com/jollyolive and use code jollyolive to get a free Fume topper when you order a journey pack. It's the perfect addition to make your gift even more special. And if you're lucky, you could even win one of Fume's limited edition gold-plated devices this holiday season. Again, that's tryfume.com/jollyolive, or just scan the QR code on the screen to grab yours now and make someone's holiday season unforgettable. Thank you to Fume for sponsoring today's video. After playing .500 ball through the first 20 games of the season in 2001, the Rangers lost 16 of their next 19 contests, burying them in a hole that they wouldn't climb out of for the remainder of the season. From May 9th to the end of the year, Texas held last place in the AL West Division, with A-Rod and his teammates only able to look on helplessly as the 2001 Seattle Mariners set a new MLB record for wins in a season. That 116-46 division champion season achieved the feat in the wake of departures from both A-Rod and Ken Griffey Jr., and it's hard not to imagine what the team could have accomplished in the postseason with even just one of those superstars still on their roster. His reception in Seattle upon his return was anything but friendly, and understandably so, considering the ugly exit from his original team. There were heavy boos that didn't let up, homemade signs that tormented Rodriguez at every turn, and of course, the drastically different states of the two teams playing. Worst of all, Alex Rodriguez's strikeout against Kazuhiro Sasaki was the clinching out for the Mariners to set the record before. But despite this baggage, Rodriguez didn't play poorly by any means. In fact, he was worth every penny in his entire stay with the Texas Rangers. In his inaugural season, A-Rod played all 162 games, led the American League with 52 home runs, and put up an OPS above 1,000 for the second season in a row. He did so with immense pressure, with his $25.2 million salary being more than the entire payroll of certain teams, like the Brewers, Royals, and Twins. In his 3-year window with the club, no player in baseball had more runs scored or runs batted in than A-Rod. He was only outdone by Barry Bonds in terms of wins above replacement and home runs hit. He became the first shortstop to hit 50 home runs in a single season, and just the third shortstop to lead the league in home runs overall. He slashed a .305 average over the 3 years and maintained an OPS on average above 1,000. He was simply worth every dollar spent, despite what many had to say about his contract. But unfortunately for all parties involved, it was never a worse time to be a Texas Ranger. In 2001, the Mariners set that new MLB win record, but it doesn't stop there. In 2002, the Los Angeles Angels won their first World Series in unforgettable fashion. That same year, the Oakland A's revolutionized baseball thinking with their Moneyball approach, winning 103 games and the division. In 2003, they'd win the division for a second straight year. While these three AL West teams teams were getting their time in the spotlight, Texas resided in the basement of the division, never winning more than 73 games and never climbing out of a firm last place. In 2003, the baseball world began to sense that change was on the horizon, despite A-Rod's efforts to dispel the rumors. In an August interview that year with ESPN, he repeatedly assured the press that he was, quote, happy in Texas, and that he was excited to see the development of the Rangers' young players like first baseman Mark Teixeira and infielder Michael Young. However, he didn't hold back when remarking that he wanted to make sure that the organization continued progressing towards making the playoffs and winning the championship, not simply becoming complacent with their standing in the division. The interview concluded with a unique bit of foreshadowing as well. A-Rod was prompted to say who he thought the best org in baseball was, and he eventually landed on the New York Yankees. Before, of course, remarking that the Texas Rangers were on their way to that status. We'll see about that. There were credible rumors that there was also tension in the clubhouse between A-Rod and manager Buck Showalter, as the two struggled for leadership and power behind the scenes. Between circulating trade rumors, A-Rod's quotes to the press, and of course his tense relationship with his manager, everyone felt like things were going to come to a head in the winter of 2003. That's when the Texas Rangers found an ideal trade partner to shed themselves of A-Rod's massive contract. The deal was actually agreed upon as well. The Boston Red Sox would receive the star shortstop, the Texas Rangers would receive star outfielder Manny Ramirez, top pitching prospect John Lester, and cash relief to help them start anew. Commissioner Bud Selig signed off on the deal as well, but who didn't was the MLBPA, once they caught wind of the fact that A-Rod would have to voluntarily lower his agreed upon salary to make the money work in the trade. Trade vetoed, future changed forever. However, in January of 2004, when Rodriguez accepted the first MVP award of his illustrious career, the two sides aimed to put the troublesome offseason behind them. One of my favorite tidbits in this entire video is that after the Rangers and A-Rod tried to let bygones be bygones, the Rangers actually named him team captain in January of 2004. I think he's the only MLB player ever to be named captain and then never play for the team that he was named captain for. Why he never played for the Rangers again? Well, it's simple. Aaron Boone was playing some pickup basketball and ended up tearing his ACL in a freak injury, sidelining him for the entire 2004 season. The New York Yankees, who had just played in the World Series in 5 of the last 6 seasons, were suddenly down an infielder just mere weeks before spring training. With a fat wallet and talent to spare, the Yankees came to the table and offered Texas another way out. This time, things went according to plan. The Rangers sent Alex Rodriguez to the Bronx, just the second time in MLB history that a reigning MVP winner would be traded. They walked away with prized young infielder Alfonso Soriano to fill the void, and the rest is history. A-Rod claimed 2 more AL MVP awards, captured his first World Series ring after conquering some postseason demons, sat on the wrong end of the most famous sports comeback in human history, got suspended twice for steroid usage, which tarnished his name, tried to sue the New York Yankees, and fell just a handful of home runs short of being one of 5 men ever to enter the 700 home run club. A complicated legacy, assuredly, one that has still left A-Rod out of Cooperstown with no invitation on the horizon. So that's the story of the Alex Rodriguez free agency sweepstakes and the events that followed, but I want to leave you guys with 2 questions that are still on my mind. The first being, was Alex Rodriguez worth the contract that he received? Because in my opinion, the answer is a wholehearted yes. Not speaking on his subsequent 10-year deal worth $275 million that A-Rod signed following his 2007 opt-out, it's hard to argue that he wasn't worth every dollar of that initial deal. From his debut season with Texas in 2001 to his final season before his opt-out in 2007, A-Rod averaged 8 WAR per year, hit over 300 cumulatively, averaged 47 home runs per season, played premium defense at 2 different infield positions, and won 3 MVP awards. That question's easy. Here's a more important question that doesn't really matter. If 25-year-old Alex Rodriguez hit the market right now, what would he get? As most of you know, Juan Soto just received $765 million from the New York Mets on a 15-year contract, with incentives and bonuses that have it landing around the $800 million mark. But with how talented Juan Soto is, it's no secret that he has defensive limitations in the outfield. Not only did Rodriguez play a more valuable position at shortstop, but he was also a top-end defender at that position. You may think it's nuts, but I think A-Rod could have netted himself anywhere from $800 million to $1 billion had he hit the market right now. We may never see a player get a contract with the word billion in it, and it just goes to show how truly special the free agencies of players like Juan Soto, Alex Rodriguez, and Bryce Harper truly are. They don't come around very often. Anyways, that's all I got for this bit of Free Agent Frenzy. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like on it and subscribe to the Jolly Olive channel. I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.